I worked at a software company when, out of nowhere, my female boss told me, "Get ready, we're heading to an important meeting with the CEO." In front of the CEO, she insulted me by introducing me as a clueless newbie. But then the CEO shocked us both by saying, "Where have you been? I have been searching for you." Suddenly my boss turned pale. "Do I know you from somewhere?" The words caught me off guard. The moment Olivia Austin, the stunning CEO of Austin Enterprises, laid eyes on me during a meeting with my boss Megan Frank, a flicker of recognition passed over her face. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Megan, with her ever-present forced grin, quickly dismissed me as just an incompetent rookie in her usual condescending tone. I tried to ignore her sharp words, as I had grown used to them by now. After the meeting ended, while Megan basked in Olivia's attention and tried her best to impress her, I quietly focused on cleaning up the room. That's when Olivia did something unexpected. Ignoring Megan entirely, she walked straight toward me, her eyes filled with emotion. "I've been searching for you," she said, gripping my hand tightly. Megan's face twisted in confusion. "Madam Co, what do you mean by that? You've been looking for him? This supposedly incompetent person?" She stared at Olivia in disbelief. Olivia didn't even acknowledge Megan's words. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she looked at me. I stood there, frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. Little did I know this single moment would change not just my life but also Megan's, who had always looked down on others like me. Let me introduce myself. My name is Brian, and I work at Wayne Trading Company. I'm 32 years old and have been with the company for just 2 years. Although I'm relatively new here, my life before joining has been anything but ordinary. It's been a roller coaster, to say the least. My father was a highly successful businessman, always on the move, traveling to different parts of the world. Because of his work, my mother and I lived in various countries during my childhood. Thanks to this, I picked up several languages over the years, 5 to be exact, with English being my strongest. But life wasn't all smooth sailing. When I was in my teens, my mother grew tired of the constant traveling. She wanted stability and decided to part ways with my father. My father, ever the optimist, couldn't understand her perspective. He'd often ask me, genuinely puzzled, "Why doesn't your mom go out more or make friends?" It wasn't something he could relate to. He thrived in new environments, while my mother struggled to adapt. Looking back, I think I took after my father in some ways. I didn't mind the constant change and could easily adjust to new places, but seeing my mother's tears every day broke something in me. I eventually made the decision to return to the US with her, leaving my father behind. He seemed saddened by our departure but quickly buried himself in his work as always. At that time the economy was booming, and Japanese businessmen like my father were thriving. Even though his life seemed exciting, I chose to support my mother, who desperately needed stability. My father ensured we didn't struggle financially. He provided enough alimony and child support to cover all our needs, including my education. But then things took a turn for the worse. My uncle, who had been doing well in real estate, convinced my mother to invest her savings into his ventures. At first it seemed like a great idea. The returns were promising and we enjoyed a brief period of financial comfort. However, when I was preparing for my college entrance exams, the economic bubble burst. My uncle, inexperienced in dealing with such a crisis, quickly sank into debt. Unfortunately, he had also used my college fund for his investments, leaving us completely broke. We lost everything: our home, our savings, and our sense of security. I managed to finish high school but couldn't afford college. To make ends meet, I took up various part-time jobs. My mother, already fragile, retreated into herself. Her once strong spirit crumbled under the weight of depression. In those days, mental health wasn't something people talked about openly. She grew weaker by the day, and eventually, a simple cold took her life shortly after my 20th birthday. Her death left me shattered. My uncle disappeared without a trace, and his family severed all ties with us. I was truly alone. Despite the heartbreak, I tried to hold on to the resilience my father had always shown. I managed to avoid inheriting my mother's debts by formally waiving the inheritance, a decision that, at the very least, saved me from financial ruin. From then on, my life became a series of odd jobs and temporary fixes. I worked in restaurants, construction, manufacturing, you name it. At one point, I even taught myself programming and became a software engineer. But no matter what I tried, nothing seemed to stick. I couldn't find a career that felt right, a place where I truly belonged. As I approached my 30s, I decided it was time for a fresh start. That's when a friend introduced me to Wayne Trading Company. It was a mid-sized firm with a stable reputation, and the work seemed like a good fit for my skills. The employees were welcoming, and even though I was new to sales, my colleagues were kind enough to show me the ropes. But not everything was smooth sailing here either. My boss, Megan Frank, was a force to be reckoned with. As the manager of the sales department, she had a knack for making everyone around her nervous. Her tone was sharp, her patience thin, and her expectations impossibly high. "Brian," Megan's voice rang out, pulling me from my thoughts. I hurried over to her desk, bracing myself for whatever she had in store. "You're late," she snapped, tapping her fingers impatiently on her desk. "When I call you, I expect you to be here in 3 seconds. Do you understand?" "I'm sorry, Miss Frank," I said, bowing slightly. I had learned that showing humility was the only way to avoid her temper flaring even more. "Fine, just don't let it happen again. Now, do you have the materials ready for next week's meeting?" I hesitated. I thought the deadline was the day after tomorrow. Her eyes narrowed. "Who told you that?" "You did, Miss Frank," I began, but before I could finish, she slammed a thick stack of papers onto her desk. "Don't blame me for your incompetence," she snapped. "Be thankful I'm here to correct your mistakes. Now stop wasting time and get to work." "Yes, ma'am," I replied, swallowing my frustration. Moments like these reminded me of how far I still had to go, but little did I know the events of that day would soon shift everything in a direction I never could have imagined. "Excuse me," I said politely, heading back to my desk. I tried to keep my head down, but I couldn't help the thoughts racing in my mind. Ever since I started working here, Megan Frank had made me her personal target. It seemed like she was always finding faults or changing her instructions just to criticize me. Was it because I was a beginner in sales? Or maybe because I was a 50-year-old rookie in a department full of younger professionals? As I sat down, I caught the sympathetic gaze of a coworker nearby. We exchanged faint smiles, the kind that said, "I understand, but there's nothing I can do." Nobody dared to openly support me in Megan's presence. One time a colleague tried to help by sharing extra resources with me. When Megan noticed, she berated me in front of everyone, claiming I was disrupting others' work. It didn't matter that I hadn't asked for help. Just the act of someone being kind to me was enough to set her off. Since then, people had stopped openly offering their support. Still, when Megan wasn't around, they would discreetly lend a hand, leaving notes or advice where I could find them. It was these small acts of kindness that kept me going. I couldn't bring myself to quit. Besides, I didn't hate the work itself. Sales was challenging but rewarding, and deep down I felt like I was following in my father's footsteps. But what was I supposed to do about Megan? Her relentless hostility was exhausting. As I scrambled to prepare the materials for the next deadline, I resolved to stay ahead of her games. From now on, I'd work at least 2 days ahead of any deadline she set. I wouldn't trust her timelines or risk falling into another one of her traps. "Brian, where are those materials?" Megan's sharp voice jolted me back to the present. "Here they are, Miss Frank," I replied, handing over the neatly organized documents. "I've also secured approval from the manufacturing division for the estimates." For once, Megan couldn't find anything to criticize. Her usual smirk faltered. "That's fine," she muttered, clearly irritated. My coworkers who had witnessed the exchange gave me subtle nods of approval. I felt a small spark of pride. Maybe I was finally proving myself, but I quickly realized that Megan wasn't going to make things easy for me. Not being able to criticize my work seemed to irritate her even more. She called me to her desk one afternoon, her voice already heavy with frustration. "Yes, Miss Frank?" I asked, standing before her. I mentally reviewed my tasks, trying to anticipate what she might complain about. To my relief, everything seemed in order. Megan glared at me, her eyes narrowing as she searched for something to scold me about. After a tense moment, her face lit up as if she just uncovered a brilliant idea. "Brian, that plant over there is wilting. Have you been watering it?" "I knew it. This is negligence." I stared at her, stunned. The plant in question was hers, and I had been specifically told not to touch it. "Miss Frank, that's your plant," I explained as calmly as I could. I was instructed to leave it alone. My explanation only made her angrier. "As the newest team member, it's your responsibility to notice these things. A plant dying in the office reflects poorly on the team's energy. Do you understand?" She slammed a stack of documents onto her desk, breathing heavily as if her outburst had relieved some great burden. "Regardless of how experienced you think you are, you're new here. Pay attention to everything and stop making excuses." Her reasoning was absurd, but I nodded, knowing that arguing would only make things worse. I returned to my desk, feeling utterly defeated. Around me, my coworkers exchanged nervous glances. Even the kindest among them seemed to wonder what I had done to earn Megan's wrath. I couldn't explain it myself, but instead of wallowing in frustration, I made a decision. If that's how it's going to be, I'll let my work speak for itself. I began putting in even more effort, studying our products in depth and visiting the factory to learn about their strengths. I used this knowledge to craft compelling presentations and pitches for clients. Slowly but surely, my results started to improve. Before long, I secured several new contracts for the company. My coworkers began to take notice. "Brian, you're really doing great work," they said, their praise genuine. Even Megan seemed less hostile, though her annoyance still lingered beneath the surface. One day she called me over with an unusually upbeat tone. "Brian, come here for a moment." I approached her desk cautiously. "Yes, Miss Frank. We have a major deal coming up with an important client," she said, her voice surprisingly professional. "I've been assigned to handle it, but I want you to come with me." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. Accompanying her to meet such an important client? "Are you serious?" I asked before quickly catching myself. "I mean, thank you for the opportunity. Don't read too much into it," she replied, her grin a little unsettling. "You've done well on smaller projects. This is a chance for you to observe how a big deal is handled. I'll be leading the discussion, you just take notes and learn." Despite her condescending tone, I couldn't help but feel excited. This was a huge step forward for me. Maybe Megan was finally starting to recognize my abilities. The day of the meeting arrived, and I followed Megan into the office of our prospective client, Castle Mountain. The CEO, Olivia Austin, was a strikingly elegant woman with an air of authority. Megan introduced herself with her usual practice charm. "Nice to meet you. I'm Megan Frank, sales manager at Wayne Trading," she said, handing over her business card. Olivia took the card with a polite smile, then turned her attention to me. "And who is this?" she asked, her eyes meeting mine. I felt momentarily overwhelmed by her presence. She was breathtakingly beautiful, and her gaze carried a sense of familiarity I couldn't quite place. This was the first time we had met, at least I thought so. But the way she looked at me as if searching for something made me wonder otherwise. "I'm Brian," I stammered, fumbling slightly as I handed over my business card to Olivia Austin. Her gaze lingered on my card before shifting back to my face, her expression thoughtful. "Forgive me, but have we met before?" she asked softly, tilting her head as if trying to piece together a memory. Before I could even form a response, Megan stepped in, her tone dripping with mockery. "Oh, don't mind him. He's just a rookie. Nothing to concern yourself with?" Turning her full attention to Olivia, she added in an overly sweet voice, "Miss Austin, we're absolutely honored that you've chosen to work with us again." Olivia smiled politely. "Not at all. The pleasure is ours. It's an honor to meet the sales manager and one of your team members today. I'm confident you'll be able to address any questions or concerns we might have." As Olivia spoke, her warmth and elegance shone through. In contrast, Megan, though undeniably striking with her sharp features and tall frame, came across as abrasive. I couldn't help but recall the countless times I'd seen her slam her desk in anger, shouting at the top of her lungs. Olivia, on the other hand, radiated a calm professionalism that Megan could only dream of. "All right then, Brian, go ahead and explain," Megan said casually, throwing me off guard. I froze for a moment, trying to process her words. "Excuse me, isn't it your role to lead the main negotiations, Miss Frank?" I asked cautiously. After all, she had made it clear that I was only here to observe. "What are you talking about?" she replied with feigned innocence. "You insisted on handling this part, didn't you?" I assumed you came prepared. It was then that the realization hit me she had set me up. Megan had brought me here not to learn, but to humiliate me in front of a client, even if it risked jeopardizing the deal. Her eyes glimmered with satisfaction as she watched me struggle to find my footing, but I wasn't going to let her win. I steadied my nerves and turned to Olivia. "Miss Austin, please take a look at these documents," I said, retrieving the prepared materials from my briefcase and handing them to her. Then I launched into my presentation. To my surprise, Olivia listened attentively, her expression encouraging. She didn't interrupt once, allowing me to finish my explanation in full. When I concluded, I asked, "Do you have any questions, Miss Austin?" "Certainly," she replied, her tone calm and professional. "Your presentation was clear. I'll compile my questions and send them to you via email for follow-up." She extended her hand, signaling the successful conclusion of our discussion. I shook her hand firmly, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. Megan, however, was visibly seething. "Does this mean the contract will move forward as planned?" she asked, her voice taut. "With Brian leading the way, yes," Olivia responded, her words slicing through the tension in the room. Megan's frustration was almost palpable. Grinding her teeth, she shot me a glare, but I refused to cower. "I'm honored to take on this role," I said confidently, meeting Olivia's gaze. Before Megan could respond, Olivia's calm voice broke the silence. "By the way," she began, drawing both Megan and me back to her. Turning directly to me, she said, "I've been looking for you, brother." My mind reeled. "Brother?" I blurted out, stunned. "Yes," Olivia said gently. "I'm your half-sister. My father, Andrew Smith, often spoke of his son Brian. He assumed you had taken your mother's maiden name." Her words left me speechless. She smiled warmly, observing my reaction. "The resemblance is clear," she continued. "Your demeanor, even the way you speak, it's unmistakable." I struggled to process her revelation. Could it be true? It seemed too incredible to believe, but Olivia's sincerity left no room for doubt. As she spoke, memories of my father surfaced, stirring emotions I hadn't felt in years. "I'm surprised but grateful," I finally managed to say. "I've been on my own since my mother's passing. Unfortunately, I lost contact with my father long ago, and I learned he passed away 3 years ago." Olivia nodded solemnly. "Your father was an extraordinary man. I cherished him deeply. After the economic downturn, he came to the United States looking for you. But your mother's family had dispersed and he couldn't find you." Hearing this brought me unexpected comfort. Knowing that my father had tried to reconnect with me, even after so many years, lifted a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. As Olivia and I spoke, Megan, who had been standing to the side, finally interjected. "If we could just wrap this up," she said, her tone sharp. She thrust the signed contract toward me, clearly eager to end the meeting. Olivia handed me the documents, but before I could take them, Megan snatched them away. "It's time for us to leave," she declared, ignoring the puzzled expressions from both Olivia and me. Back at the office, Megan's frustration boiled over. She turned to me, her face contorted in anger. "We need to have a serious talk," she hissed. "Why were the materials you presented so different from what I instructed you to prepare?" Her accusation was absurd, but I kept my tone calm. "Miss Frank, I followed the note you left and created the materials as instructed. However, I felt they didn't fully address the client's needs, so I prepared additional documents as a backup. Since you told me to explain everything, I relied on my materials when the ones you provided weren't available." "You're saying this is my fault?" Megan snapped, her voice rising. "Ultimately, the client understood the materials and appreciated the presentation. So it's not an issue, is it?" I replied firmly. Megan's face darkened, but before she could respond, her tone shifted to a mocking sneer. "And this Olivia Austin, she's your sister? Quite the emotional reunion. There's a significant age gap between you two. Your father must have been quite active in his later years." How distasteful. Her words struck a nerve. Her mocking tone, the insinuations, it was too much. But I swallowed my anger. Megan could try to tear me down, but she wouldn't break me. I could handle Megan's constant jabs at me, but when she spoke ill of my parents, I couldn't stay silent. "Miss Frank, that remark is inappropriate and goes against company policy," I said firmly, keeping my tone as steady as possible. "Oh, are you upset?" she sneered, pushing me hard on the shoulder. The unexpected shove made me stumble slightly. "Stumbling from just a little push? You must be getting old," she scoffed. Your arrogant colleague claimed you're the lead on this project, but you should step aside. Tell her I'm the one who should be in charge. I steadied myself and replied, my balance has nothing to do with my role at Castle Mountain, and I have no intention of stepping down. I'm here to do the job I was assigned. Our argument began drawing attention from others in the lobby, but neither of us noticed. Megan's voice grew louder, and I refused to back down. Suddenly, a booming voice cut through the tension. Enough, both of you. Stop this nonsense right now, commanded Jack Wayne, the president of Wayne Trading Company. His stern expression silenced everyone, including Megan. Mr. President, Megan gasped, covering her mouth in shock. Look around, he said sharply. Everyone heard your argument. Both of you come to my office. We'll discuss this there, sir. I apologize, I said sincerely, bowing my head slightly. Good. And you, Miss Frank? His eyes fixed on Megan, daring her to challenge his authority. Reluctantly, Megan muttered a brief apology, and we followed him to his office. The room felt even more imposing than usual, and the air was thick with tension. Justify your actions, Mr. Wayne demanded as soon as we stepped inside. His gaze shifted between the two of us. I chose to remain silent at first, curious to hear Megan's explanation. But as soon as she opened her mouth, I realized my mistake. Her account was a complete fabrication. She claimed I had been neglecting my responsibilities and mistreating junior colleagues. According to her, she had tried multiple times to guide me, but I had made no progress. She went on to say that she had invited me to the Castle Mountain meeting to demonstrate proper job performance, but instead, I had used the opportunity to chat with a relative and secure my position through personal connections. Someone as old and unprofessional as Brian should be terminated, she declared, her voice rising. We need younger, more compliant employees. When she finished, Mr. Wayne turned to me, his expression unreadable. Do you have any counter-arguments, Brian? Yes, I do, I replied calmly. Then I systematically dismantled Megan's claims. I explained that I had always fulfilled my duties and treated my colleagues with respect. I pointed out that Megan's harassment had been inconsistent, and I had kept records, occasionally even recordings, to back up my statements. I also clarified the events of the Castle Mountain meeting. Miss Frank instructed me to observe and learn, I explained. But without warning, she told me to present to the client, giving me no materials to work with. It was a deliberate attempt to humiliate me. Despite that, I prepared additional materials in advance, knowing they might be needed. The client chose to move forward with me because they recognized my professionalism and ability to separate personal matters from business. I paused, then added, while I did learn that Olivia Austin is my half-sister, this discovery was made after the business discussion had concluded. The client was fully aware of the distinction, and I disclosed everything to avoid any misunderstandings. Megan tried to interrupt several times, but Mr. Wayne silenced her with a sharp glare. He listened intently, his expression growing more serious as I spoke. When I finished, he excused himself to review the situation further, leaving us in tense silence. When he returned, his frustration was evident. I just spoke with Miss Austin, he announced. Her account aligns entirely with Brian's. Megan's face paled. That's because she's his sister. Of course she'd lie to protect him, she blurted out, her voice nearly a shout. Mr. Wayne raised a hand to silence her. I simply asked her about the meeting. I didn't share either of your versions. Olivia had no reason to lie, and her account was clear and honest. Miss Frank, you attempted to sabotage a key meeting by humiliating Brian in front of a client. What would have happened if we lost the contract? Would you have blamed him and hoped no one noticed your actions? Megan stammered, but couldn't form a coherent response. Furthermore, Mr. Wayne continued, your daily conduct is deeply concerning. I will be launching a full investigation into your behavior. Until a decision is reached, you are to stay home. This is unfair, Megan snapped, her voice shrill. You're keeping that useless old man who bounces from job to job and punishing me? I'm the valuable one here. Useless? Mr. Wayne repeated, his tone incredulous. Brian is far from useless. His versatility and accomplishments speak for themselves. It's an honor to have him on our team. He has demonstrated remarkable adaptability and professionalism in every role he's taken. I scratched the back of my head, feeling slightly embarrassed by the praise. Thank you, sir, I said quietly. I've simply done my best in every position I've held, and it shows, Mr. Wayne replied firmly. Your dedication has shaped an impressive career. I spoke with the CEO of a company you worked for previously. They were amazed by a system you developed which is still in use today. Well, I said modestly, I designed it so anyone could use it, not just me. That way the whole team could benefit. Turning back to Megan, Mr. Wayne asked pointedly, Miss Frank, what would happen if you suddenly weren't here? Would the company collapse? Megan hesitated, then said defiantly, of course. No one can replace me. That, Mr. Wayne said sternly, is the problem. Thinking you're irreplaceable isn't a strength, it's arrogance. A true leader ensures the company thrives even in their absence. Megan opened her mouth to argue but stopped when she saw Mr. Wayne's sharp gaze. She looked down, clearly frustrated. I need to adopt the same mindset, I said quietly. Making sure my absence wouldn't disrupt the company is just as important as excelling in my current role. Megan said nothing further, and the room fell silent. For the first time I felt as though I had truly stood my ground. Now I understand why none of your previous employers had anything bad to say about you, Mr. Wayne murmured, his tone thoughtful. Turning to Megan, he added, despite being a manager, you only think about yourself. It's truly disappointing. And I must admit I share some responsibility for not recognizing this earlier. His wry smile softened the blow only slightly. Megan, it's clear you lack the qualities needed to lead effectively. A good manager should recognize the potential in their team, but you've consistently failed to do that. Megan sat frozen at her desk, the weight of his words bearing down on her. Tears welled in her eyes, and for the first time her usual confident demeanor crumbled as she broke down in front of us. "Tears won't solve anything," Mr. Wayne said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Take the rest of the day off, and don't return until further notice." Reluctantly, Megan stood up, her movements slow and heavy. Her head was bowed, and the air of arrogance she usually carried was completely gone. Without another word she left the office, leaving behind a sense of finality. Mr. Wayne turned to me, his expression softening. "Well, Brian, it's been quite a day for you, hasn't it?" "Yes, sir," I replied. "I'm just grateful you took the time to hear my side of the story instead of accepting Miss Frank's accusations at face value." He nodded. "You've handled yourself with dignity. So, do I have your agreement to officially take on this role?" "Absolutely," I said, extending my hand. We shook firmly, sealing the decision. "I hope you'll remain with the company for a long time, Brian," he said. "We're lucky to have you." "I find the work here fulfilling," I replied honestly. "I hope to stay as long as possible." "Wonderful. I look forward to continuing our collaboration," he said with a warm smile. A thorough investigation into Megan's conduct followed, revealing the full extent of her mistreatment, not just toward me, but toward other mid-career employees as well. It became clear that she had a strong bias against individuals with diverse work histories, seeing them as less capable or committed. Her actions at Castle Mountain, which could have seriously jeopardized the company's reputation, sealed her fate. In the end she was dismissed. I couldn't help but wonder how Megan, with her haughty attitude and inflexible nature, would navigate her future. Adjusting to a new work environment would be a challenge for someone like her. Through the grapevine, I heard that she found another job, but the pattern repeated itself. She clashed with colleagues, created conflicts, and eventually left. One by one her opportunities dried up. She couldn't secure full-time employment and had to settle for part-time roles. A former coworker once told me they saw her working at a small office. Younger employees were openly dismissive of her, saying things like, "That old woman is useless." My colleague admitted they couldn't bring themselves to approach her, and I understood why. The memory of her arrogance still lingered, but now it was overshadowed by pity. In stark contrast, my life had taken a positive turn. Olivia, my newfound sister, had become a central part of my life. Outside of work we maintained a close bond, and her presence filled a void I hadn't realized was so deep. She had become the family I had been missing for so long. Today Olivia brought me to visit our father's grave for the first time. It had been nearly 3 decades since I last saw him, and standing there in front of his modest resting place, I felt a mix of emotions. With my hands clasped in prayer, I lowered my head and spoke silently to him. "Father, I followed in your footsteps and became a salesman. While I may not be traveling the globe as you did, I've found fulfillment in my work. I'm doing well, so there's no need for you to worry. Thank you for guiding Olivia to me. Through her I found a part of you I thought was lost forever." When I finished my prayer, I stood and turned to Olivia. She had been watching me closely, her expression unreadable. "What were you saying?" she asked, a playful curiosity in her tone. I smiled, shaking my head. "It's a private matter, a conversation between father and son." She laughed softly, and together we walked away from the grave, the sun shining brightly overhead. As we strolled into the light, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. My gaze was fixed firmly ahead, ready to embrace whatever came next.